Rancher's daughter came back with an Apache woman. "Dad, we'll protect her." Life on the ranch had always been predictable, marked by the rhythm of chores, the changing seasons, and the occasional visit to town for supplies. He liked it that way. There was comfort in routine, and the quiet of the wide desert plains gave him peace. John wiped the sweat from his brow and leaned against the fence post, taking a moment to admire the cattle grazing lazily in the distance. The wind whispered through the dry grass, carrying the faint scent of sage and dust. It was a normal afternoon, or at least he thought it was. His eyes, trained over decades to notice movement from far away, suddenly caught something unusual on the horizon. A figure was walking along the dirt road that led to the ranch house, and she was not alone. As the figures drew closer, John recognized his daughter, Emily. She was in her early 20s now, tall, strong, and confident, the spitting image of her late mother, with the same determined eyes and gentle smile. But the person walking beside her was unfamiliar. She was a young woman, perhaps a few years older than Emily, with dark hair pulled back neatly and eyes that carried a mix of wariness and quiet strength. She walked with a steady grace, despite the obvious fatigue that marked her features. Emily's arm was slightly extended, guiding the woman forward as if to protect her, and the sight struck John with a mixture of curiosity and unease. As Emily reached the gate, she lifted her hand in greeting, her face breaking into a smile that was full of warmth and resolve. "Hi, Dad," she called out. Her voice carried over the fields, strong and confident. "I want you to meet someone." He had not expected anyone to arrive at the ranch today, especially not a stranger. The ranch had always been a place of safety for family, a place where strangers were rare and treated with caution. Emily took a deep breath and turned to the young woman beside her. "Dad, this is Aeon. She needs our help." "Emily, where did you even find her?" His voice carried both concern and a hint of disbelief. He could see the exhaustion in Aeon's posture, the way her hands hung loosely by her sides, but there was also a spark in her eyes, a quiet resilience that seemed to radiate from her very being. "She was in town," Emily explained, her voice steady. "She didn't have anywhere to go. Her family, they were forced to leave their land and she has nowhere else to turn. I couldn't leave her there. I had to bring her home." But the idea of bringing a stranger into the family ranch, someone from outside their community, someone whose life and history were completely different from theirs, made him uneasy. "Emily, are you sure this is wise? You don't know anything about her. How can we trust her?" "She's a good person. I've seen it." There was a quiet intensity in her voice that reminded John of the days when she was a little girl, stubbornly standing her ground in the face of any challenge. That stubbornness had gotten her into trouble at times, but it had also guided her through life with courage and determination. Aeon stepped forward slightly, her voice soft but clear. "Sir," she said, addressing John directly, "I don't want to be a burden. I only seek a safe place to stay for a little while. I am willing to work and help in any way I can. I respect your home and your family." There was a sincerity in her words that made John pause. He had spent years observing people, and it was rare to see such honesty and humility in someone who had clearly been through hardship. John studied her for a long moment. He noticed the way her hands, though calloused from work or travel, were steady. He noticed the determination in her eyes. And perhaps most importantly, he noticed the way his daughter stood firmly beside her, unafraid and resolute. Emily had always had a strong sense of justice and a kind heart. He trusted her judgment, even when it went against his own instincts. After what felt like an eternity, John nodded slowly. "All right," he said finally, his voice firm but careful. "She can stay. But I expect you both to follow the rules of this ranch. You work hard, you respect this land, and you respect this family." Even in that quiet moment, John could sense her strength and resilience. She was someone who had endured much, yet still carried herself with dignity. The rest of the afternoon passed in a flurry of activity. Emily led Aeon into the ranch house, showing her where she would sleep and how things worked. She introduced her to the routines of ranch life, feeding the animals, carrying water, and preparing meals. John observed quietly, still cautious, yet gradually allowing himself to relax as he saw the natural ease with which Aeon adapted to the ranch. As evening approached, the sky turning a deep orange and purple, John found himself sitting on the porch, watching his daughter and Aeon as they walked across the yard, talking and laughing quietly. It was a simple scene, but it carried a profound weight. John realized that life on the ranch was about to change in ways he could not have anticipated. The presence of Aeon would bring challenges, undoubtedly, but it would also bring growth, understanding, and perhaps even unexpected joy. He thought about his own life, the lessons he had learned from his father and grandfather, and how the land had shaped him. He realized that just as the land was always changing, sometimes gently, sometimes harshly, so too was life. And perhaps, he thought, change was not always something to fear. Sometimes it was an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to open one's heart in ways that had seemed impossible before. That night, as the stars began to sparkle over the desert sky, John stayed on the porch long after the others had gone inside. He listened to the soft sounds of the ranch, the distant lowing of cattle, the rustle of wind through the grass, and the occasional call of a night bird. Somewhere in the quiet, he felt a shift in his heart. Emily had always been brave, always determined. And now, through her courage and compassion, she had brought someone into their lives who would challenge them, teach them, and perhaps even strengthen the bonds of family in ways John could not yet imagine. The evening ended with a quiet sense of anticipation. The ranch, so long a place of routine and predictability, now held a new possibility. And while John knew that challenges lay ahead, he also knew that this was a moment of connection, of humanity, and of hope. His daughter had returned not just with a stranger, but with a chance to open their hearts, to embrace change, and to recognize the power of kindness and loyalty. And so, as the night settled over the ranch, John Matthews allowed himself a small smile. Tomorrow would be the beginning of something new, something unexpected, and perhaps something truly remarkable. Life on the Matthews Ranch began to settle into a new rhythm, but it was far from the quiet routine John had known before. The addition of Aeon, the young Apache woman Emily had brought home, changed the air of the place. It wasn't just the presence of someone new, it was the way she moved, the way she observed the land, and the quiet confidence she carried that made everyone notice. At first, John felt tension gnawing at him, a mixture of worry and uncertainty. He worried about his daughter's judgment, about the reactions of the townspeople, and about what it would mean to bring someone from outside their small community into the heart of their lives. Emily, however, was undeterred. Each morning she rose early, making sure Aeon had a place to sleep, a warm breakfast, and guidance on what needed to be done. She taught her about the routines of ranch life, how to feed the animals efficiently, how to mend broken fences, and how to navigate the sprawling fields without getting lost. Aeon listened carefully, learning quickly, never complaining even when the work was exhausting. There was a quiet determination in her that impressed Emily and slowly began to impress John too. At first, Aeon remained slightly reserved. She had grown up with her own traditions and customs, and life on the ranch was very different from anything she had known. But there was a curiosity in her eyes, a willingness to adapt, that showed she wanted to belong. She asked questions, not out of stubbornness, but out of a desire to understand. She wanted to do her best, and Emily noticed. That dedication made Emily feel even more protective and responsible for her friend. "We'll make this work, Aeon," she would say. "I promise." And Aeon, in return, would smile softly, a small gesture of trust that gradually began to melt the worries John carried. Despite the growing connection between the two women, life on the ranch was not without its challenges. The townspeople were aware of Aeon's presence, and whispers began to circulate. Some were curious, others skeptical, and a few expressed open disapproval. There were subtle looks when Aeon walked into the general store, quiet questions asked to Emily about who she was and why she had come. John noticed the change, the cautious glances, and the occasional murmured warnings. He felt a sting of frustration but also a renewed sense of responsibility. He realized that it was not just his family's safety he had to consider, but also the way the community perceived them. One afternoon, John called Emily to the porch while Aeon worked in the fields. He sat in the rocking chair, the late afternoon sun warming his back, and spoke with a seriousness that made Emily pause. "Emily," he began, "I know you want to help her and I can see that she's capable, but you have to understand this is more than just helping someone. People talk, and sometimes talk turns to trouble. She's honest, strong, and kind. I know you're worried, but you'll see, she's not a threat. She's someone worth protecting." He remembered the many times she had shown courage and wisdom beyond her years, standing up for those who could not stand for themselves. Could he trust her judgment in this case? He wasn't sure, but he also knew he had to try. Over the next few days, John observed Aeon closely. He watched her move through the ranch with quiet efficiency, tending to the animals, repairing fences, and helping wherever she could. She was not boastful about her efforts. She simply did what needed to be done. Even the horses, usually wary of newcomers, seemed to respond to her calm and steady presence. There was a natural harmony in the way she interacted with the land, a connection that reminded John of how he himself had learned to respect it from his father. Slowly, the tension he had felt began to soften. Emily and Aeon spent hours together in the fields, talking quietly as they worked. Emily learned about Aeon's life, about the struggles her family had faced, and about the traditions and culture that shaped her. In turn, Aeon learned about life on the ranch, about the seasons, the animals, and the responsibilities that came with living on the land. They shared stories, laughter, and small victories, building a friendship that was grounded in trust and mutual respect. Emily began to see Aeon as a sister, someone she could rely on in times of need, someone who would stand beside her no matter what. Despite the growing bond, challenges arose. One morning, a sudden storm swept across the ranch, heavy rain falling in sheets and wind whipping through the fields. The cattle became restless, and John knew he had to act quickly. Emily and Aeon ran alongside him, helping to herd the frightened animals into a safe area. Aeon moved with surprising skill and confidence, calming the animals and assisting where needed without hesitation. John watched, a sense of pride and relief washing over him. He realized that Aeon was not just capable, she was reliable in ways he had not expected. The storm passed, leaving the ranch drenched and muddy, but the experience changed something in John. He began to see Aeon not as a stranger or a burden, but as someone who could truly contribute to the family and the ranch. Emily's insistence on helping her friend had been wise after all. He started to feel a quiet admiration for both of them, their courage, their determination, and their ability to face challenges together. Evenings became a time of reflection and conversation. The three of them would sit by the fire, sharing meals, stories, and laughter. Aeon would talk about her homeland, describing the landscapes, the traditions, and the people she loved. Emily would listen intently, fascinated by the richness of her friend's experiences. John, initially hesitant to engage, began to ask questions too, genuinely interested in understanding Aeon's background. These moments of connection helped bridge the gap between different worlds, creating a sense of unity that had been missing from the ranch for years. As the days turned into weeks, Aeon began to earn the respect of others beyond the family. Neighbors who had once whispered cautiously now greeted her politely, impressed by her work ethic and demeanor. She carried herself with a quiet dignity, never seeking attention or praise, yet her presence was undeniable. John noticed how the community's perception was slowly shifting, and he felt a sense of relief. Emily had not been mistaken. Aeon's character and strength were undeniable, and even the skeptics could see it. Yet, life on the ranch continued to test them. There were long days of hard work, unexpected repairs, and the occasional encounter with strangers or wandering animals that required quick thinking and courage. Through it all, Emily and Aeon proved their dedication. They supported each other, shared the burdens of the work, and celebrated small victories together. John observed, sometimes silently, sometimes offering guidance, and began to feel a growing respect for the bond the two had formed. It was more than friendship. It was a partnership grounded in loyalty, trust, and shared purpose. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, John found himself reflecting on the changes in his life. The ranch, once a place of quiet routine, was now alive with new energy and new possibilities. Emily had shown courage and wisdom in bringing Aeon into their home, and Aeon had responded with integrity, skill, and humility. Together, they had transformed not just the daily life of the ranch, but also the way John saw the world. He realized that life was unpredictable, that challenges could arise from unexpected directions, and that sometimes the bravest acts were those of compassion and kindness. Emily had followed her heart, and in doing so, she had created an opportunity for growth and understanding, for herself, for Aeon, and for him. He felt a quiet sense of pride, not just in his daughter, but in the young woman she had brought into their lives. As night settled over the ranch, the wind carrying the faint scent of sage and earth, John stood on the porch once more. He watched Emily and Aeon walking across the fields, talking and laughing softly under the stars. The sight filled him with a sense of hope and possibility. Life on the ranch would never be the same, but perhaps that was a good thing. Change, though sometimes difficult, had brought something new, something valuable. For the first time in many years, John felt a sense of peace and anticipation. He knew challenges lay ahead, but he also knew that together, Emily and Aeon could face them. Their bond was strong, their courage unwavering, and their hearts open. And in that, he found a deep sense of comfort. The ranch was no longer just a place of work and routine. It had become a place of connection, of friendship, and of growth. And as the night deepened, with stars twinkling overhead and the quiet hum of the desert surrounding them, John understood that this new chapter of their lives had only just begun, and that the future held promise, hope, and the kind of strength that comes from standing together in the face of uncertainty. Life on the Matthews Ranch had settled into a new rhythm, but the quiet days of work and routine were soon interrupted by a test none of them could have anticipated. One afternoon, John noticed unusual tracks near the perimeter of the property. The animals were restless, and the wind carried a faint sense of unease. John's experience told him that something, or someone, was nearby. Ranch life had taught him to pay attention to the small details, and this time his instincts were sharp. Emily and Aeon were in the fields, tending to the animals as usual. Emily noticed her father's serious expression and came over immediately. "Dad, what is it?" she asked, concern in her voice. John pointed toward the distant trees where the tracks led. "Someone's been near the ranch," he said. "I don't know who or what, but we need to be careful. Get the animals ready and make sure nothing is left unsecured." "We should prepare quickly." Emily nodded, feeling a mixture of anxiety and determination. She had learned much from her father about protecting the ranch, but this was the first time she would face real danger alongside someone who was not family by blood. The afternoon passed in a flurry of activity. Emily and Aeon moved with precision, securing the animals in the barn, closing gates, and making sure the perimeter of the ranch was safe. John watched, both proud and concerned. The two women worked seamlessly together, anticipating each other's movements and covering every detail. There was a rhythm to their teamwork, a harmony that only comes from trust and shared purpose. As evening approached, the threat became clearer. A small band of intruders appeared at the edge of the property, moving cautiously but with intent. They were looking for livestock to steal, unaware that the Matthews Ranch was prepared and guarded by a family who would not back down. John grabbed his rifle, ready to defend his home, but it quickly became apparent that the two young women were ready to act as well. Emily's voice was calm but firm. "Aeon, stay close. We'll do this together." Aeon nodded, her eyes steady. They moved silently through the yard, checking fences and ensuring the animals were hidden. It was tense work, each step measured and deliberate. John noticed the way Aeon handled herself, not with fear but with confidence. She had a presence that demanded respect, and he realized that Emily's insistence on protecting her friend had been the right choice. The intruders tested the perimeter, but Emily and Aeon's preparation forced them to retreat temporarily. John stepped forward, assessing the situation. "We need to be ready if they come back," he said. Emily and Aeon agreed, setting up positions near the barn and the main house. Each knew their role. Emily would cover the barn area, Aeon would guard the side gate, and John would remain near the house, ready to intervene if needed. Night fell and the ranch was cloaked in darkness. The wind carried a faint rustle of movement, and every sound seemed amplified. The intruders returned, attempting to approach the livestock once more. Emily and Aeon moved quickly, corralling the frightened animals and using their knowledge of the land to block the intruders' path. Their teamwork was seamless, born of hours of practice and shared determination. At one point, an intruder tried to climb over a fence near the barn. Emily spotted him immediately and called out a warning. Aeon moved swiftly, blocking his path and guiding the animal away from danger. The intruder hesitated, clearly surprised by her courage and quick thinking. John watched from the porch, his chest swelling with pride. He realized that the two women had not only protected the ranch, but had done so with intelligence and bravery. The confrontation escalated as the intruders tried different approaches, testing the defenses and attempting to find weaknesses. Emily and Aeon adapted to every move, coordinating silently and effectively. Aeon's calm and strategic thinking complemented Emily's energy and determination, creating a combination that left the intruders frustrated and confused. John, though ready to step in, found himself letting the young women lead the defense. He saw their skill and bravery firsthand, and he knew he had nothing to fear with them by his side. Hours passed and the intruders finally retreated, realizing that the Matthews Ranch was not an easy target. The animals were safe, the fences were intact, and the family had stood firm. Emily and Aeon, though exhausted, shared a quiet moment of triumph. They had faced danger together and had emerged victorious, their bond stronger than ever. John joined them, his expression a mix of relief and admiration. "That was impressive," John said quietly, looking at both of them. "I didn't think anyone could handle that so well, especially in the dark and under pressure." Emily smiled, wiping sweat from her brow. "We did it together," she said. Aeon nodded, her eyes reflecting the same quiet pride. "We protected the ranch," she said simply. "That is what matters." The ranch had been tested, and the test had revealed strength, loyalty, and resilience in ways John had not anticipated. The following days were filled with reflection and repair. Some fences had been damaged, and the animals were still unsettled from the encounter, but Emily and Aeon approached each task with determination. They worked side by side, laughing quietly at small mishaps and supporting each other through the more challenging repairs. John observed, a sense of awe growing in him. These young women had transformed the ranch not just by their presence but by their courage, their work ethic, and their unwavering loyalty. The stormy night had also shifted the perspective of the local community. Neighbors who had once been skeptical now approached with a newfound respect. Word of the young women's bravery spread, and while some remained cautious, many were impressed by the courage and skill displayed on the Matthews Ranch. John noticed the subtle change in tone and felt a quiet satisfaction. Emily had not only brought someone worthy into their home, but had also strengthened the family's reputation through integrity and bravery. As the days turned into weeks, life returned to a steady rhythm, but with a deeper sense of confidence and connection. Emily and Aeon continued to learn from each other, sharing knowledge about the land, the animals, and life itself. They celebrated small successes, comforted each other through challenges, and built routines that combined strength with compassion. John became more relaxed, offering guidance when needed, but increasingly allowing the young women to take the lead in managing the ranch. Evenings became a time of reflection and gratitude. They would sit by the fire, sharing stories and experiences from their lives. Aeon would talk about her heritage, the traditions of her people, and the struggles she had faced. Emily would listen intently, fascinated by the depth of Aeon's knowledge and resilience. John would ask questions, sometimes surprised by how much he learned from someone so young, someone he had once regarded as an outsider. These conversations strengthened the bond between them, turning the ranch into a place not just of work, but of learning, connection, and understanding. John often found himself thinking about the events of that stormy night, realizing that the true test had not been the danger itself, but the courage, trust, and unity it revealed. Emily and Aeon had proven that strength came not only from experience or physical power, but from loyalty, quick thinking, and the willingness to stand together. The ranch, once a place defined by routine and predictability, now had a new energy, an energy born of courage, partnership, and the shared understanding that they could face anything together. One evening, as the sun set over the rolling hills, John stood on the porch, watching Emily and Aeon move through the fields. They were tending to the animals, talking and laughing softly, completely at ease in each other's company. John felt a deep sense of pride and satisfaction. The ranch had survived not just because of its fences and land, but because of the people who lived there. Emily had chosen wisely, and Aeon had proven herself invaluable in ways that no one could ignore. The events of that night became a story they would remember and retell, not for the danger itself, but for the courage and unity it revealed. It was a defining moment, one that would shape their relationships, their understanding of trust, and their view of what family truly meant. John realized that family was not limited by blood. It was built through loyalty, courage, and the willingness to stand together in times of need. Life on the Matthews Ranch continued, stronger and richer than before. The partnership between Emily and Aeon became a cornerstone of the household, and John found peace in knowing that the ranch was in capable hands. Challenges would come again, as they always do, but he knew now that they had the strength, the skill, and the heart to face whatever the future held. As night fell over the ranch, with stars twinkling brightly in the clear desert sky, John took one last look at the two young women walking back to the house. He felt a profound sense of gratitude for Emily's courage, for Aeon's resilience, and for the bond that had formed between them. The ranch had survived a test, and in doing so it had grown stronger, not just as a place, but as a family. After the stormy night that had tested the Matthews family, life on the ranch began to return to a calmer rhythm. But it was a new rhythm, one enriched by the experiences they had shared, the challenges they had faced, and the bonds that had grown stronger through adversity. John Matthews, once cautious and skeptical of the changes his daughter had brought into their lives, now watched Emily and Aeon with quiet pride. He had learned that courage, loyalty, and compassion could transcend differences in culture, background, or upbringing. Emily and Aeon worked together seamlessly, their movements synchronized like a well-practiced dance. Each day brought tasks that demanded skill, patience, and cooperation, feeding the animals, checking fences, repairing machinery, and ensuring that the ranch remained in top condition. But beyond the physical labor, the two young women shared ideas, stories, and laughter, creating a sense of joy and warmth that filled the home. John often observed them from the porch, amazed by how naturally their friendship had grown, and by how much strength and confidence Emily had gained from the experience. Aeon had become more than a guest on the ranch. She had become a part of the family. She took pride in her work, always performing her duties with care and diligence. The animals responded to her presence with ease, trusting her calm and steady guidance. Even the horses, who could be wary of strangers, seemed to sense her gentle authority. John found himself silently impressed by her intelligence and resourcefulness. She approached each challenge thoughtfully, never rushing, yet always acting decisively when needed. The townspeople began to notice the changes too. Some who had once whispered questions about Aeon's presence now greeted her with respect. They saw how she had integrated herself into ranch life, how she worked tirelessly and treated the animals with care. Her courage during the previous stormy night had become known, and it earned her admiration from neighbors who had been skeptical at first. John could not help but feel a sense of satisfaction, knowing that his daughter's compassion had not only helped Aeon, but had also strengthened the family's reputation in the community. Evenings were now a time of reflection and connection for the three of them. After a long day of work, they would sit together on the porch, sharing meals and stories. Aeon spoke of her family, the traditions of her people, and the challenges they had faced in recent years. Emily shared her own experiences growing up on the ranch, the lessons her father had taught her, and the hopes she held for the future. John listened attentively, sometimes offering advice, sometimes asking questions, and often simply enjoying the quiet companionship of his daughter and her friend. One particular evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, John reflected on how far they had all come. The ranch was no longer just a place of work. It had become a place of learning, growth, and connection. Emily's courage had brought Aeon into their lives, and Aeon's presence had enriched their family in ways that John had never anticipated. He realized that strength came not only from physical labor or experience, but from compassion, loyalty, and the willingness to stand by one another in times of need. The bond between Emily and Aeon continued to deepen. They learned to anticipate each other's needs, to communicate with subtle gestures and shared understanding. Aeon taught Emily some of the skills she had learned from her own heritage, including methods of tracking and observing the land that Emily had never known. In turn, Emily taught Aeon about the rhythms of ranch life, the habits of the animals, and the practical skills needed to maintain their home. Their friendship became a partnership built on trust, respect, and a shared commitment to protecting the ranch and its inhabitants. John found that he had grown as well. He had always been a man of caution, someone who valued routine and predictability. But through observing Emily and Aeon, he learned to appreciate the courage it took to step outside comfort zones, to embrace change, and to act with compassion even when the outcome was uncertain. He saw that family could extend beyond bloodlines, that loyalty and love could be shared with those who were not born into one's home, but who earned a place through character and action. Life on the ranch was not without its challenges. Weather was unpredictable, equipment sometimes failed, and the land itself demanded constant care. But Emily and Aeon approached each difficulty with determination and resourcefulness. They worked long hours, often side by side, problem-solving and supporting each other in every task. John joined them when he could, offering guidance or lending a hand, but increasingly he relied on their judgment and initiative. He had learned to trust them completely, knowing that they shared his values and his commitment to the ranch. One day, as the spring season approached, the ranch faced another test, not from intruders or storms, but from the demands of expansion and planning for the future. The cattle were growing, fences needed reinforcement, and new water sources had to be managed. The work was hard and the hours were long, but Emily and Aeon tackled it with energy and cooperation. John noticed how the women's teamwork inspired even the ranch hands, who had long respected his leadership, but now began to recognize the strength and skill that Emily and Aeon brought to every challenge. Through these daily challenges, the bond between the three grew even stronger. They celebrated successes together, whether it was repairing a fence, bringing in the last of the cattle from a long day in the fields, or sharing a meal that had been prepared with care. They comforted each other during setbacks, offering support and encouragement. The ranch became a place where trust, courage, and kindness were as important as skill and hard work, and John realized that these qualities were the true foundation of their home. Aeon's presence also brought a deeper understanding and appreciation of diversity to the ranch. John began to learn about the culture, traditions, and history of her people, gaining new insights that broadened his perspective. Emily, too, learned the value of empathy and open-mindedness, recognizing that people from different backgrounds could teach valuable lessons and enrich their lives in unexpected ways. Their lives intertwined in a tapestry of shared experiences, blending tradition and innovation, strength and compassion. As summer approached, the Matthews Ranch was thriving. The animals were healthy, the land was well tended, and the home was filled with laughter, conversation, and a sense of belonging. Emily and Aeon had become inseparable in their daily routines, and John took pride in watching them grow and flourish. The events of the past months, the arrival of Aeon, the stormy night, and the challenges they had faced together, had created bonds that would last a lifetime. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant hills, John walked out to the fields where Emily and Aeon were tending to the animals. He watched them moving gracefully, working in harmony, and felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The ranch had become more than a place of work. It had become a home, a community, and a symbol of resilience and courage. He realized that Emily's decision to bring Aeon into their lives had been one of the wisest choices she had ever made, and he was grateful for the lessons it had taught him. Aeon, for her part, had grown comfortable in her new home. She no longer felt like a stranger, no longer uncertain or hesitant. She had found a place where she was valued, respected, and loved. Her skills, wisdom, and courage had earned her a permanent place in the family, and she embraced the responsibilities and joys that came with it. Emily's unwavering support had given her confidence, and in turn, Aeon's presence had strengthened Emily's sense of purpose and compassion. The community around them also began to change. Neighbors who had once been wary of Aeon now sought her advice, respected her judgment, and appreciated her contributions. The Matthews Ranch became known not only for its hardworking family, but also for its spirit of courage, kindness, and unity. John felt proud, not just of his daughter, but of the way their household had grown, adapted, and thrived in the face of change. As the sun set on another day, casting a warm glow over the rolling fields, John stood on the porch, reflecting on the journey they had taken together. He thought of the stormy night that had tested their courage, the long days of work that had strengthened their bond, and the quiet evenings of reflection that had brought understanding and connection. The ranch had become more than a home. It had become a living testament to the power of loyalty, trust, and compassion. Emily and Aeon approached, smiling and carrying fresh water from the well. They moved with the ease and confidence of those who had weathered challenges together. John greeted them warmly, and together they watched as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. There was a profound sense of peace and fulfillment in the air, a quiet acknowledgement of all they had achieved and all they had learned. John knew that life would continue to bring challenges as it always did, but he also knew that they were ready to face them. The bonds of friendship, loyalty, and family that had been forged through adversity were strong and unbreakable. Emily had proven her courage and wisdom, Aeon had shown her strength and integrity, and John had learned to embrace change, trust, and love in new ways. The Matthews Ranch, once a place of routine and quiet work, had transformed into a home filled with courage, compassion, and hope. The family had grown in unexpected ways, learning that strength came not only from experience or heritage but from the willingness to stand together, protect one another, and face the future with determination. As the stars began to twinkle in the clear night sky, John, Emily, and Aeon stood together, watching the ranch that had survived challenges, grown stronger and become a symbol of resilience. They had faced uncertainty, danger, and doubt, and emerged united, stronger, and more compassionate than ever. In that quiet moment, the rancher realized that life's true strength lay not in the land or the work itself, but in the courage, love, and loyalty of the people who called it home. And so, as the night settled over the Matthews Ranch, there was a sense of peace and completion. Their journey had been difficult, but it had led to growth, understanding, and enduring bonds. Emily and Aeon had proven themselves as partners, friends, and guardians of the ranch, and John had learned the true meaning of family and courage. The future, while uncertain, was filled with promise, hope, and the knowledge that together they could face anything. The ranch stood quiet under the stars, a testament to resilience, compassion, and the strength found in unity. And as John watched Emily and Aeon walk side by side, sharing laughter and quiet conversation, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for the unexpected journey that had brought them together, and for the life they had built, one of trust, loyalty, and enduring love.